Welcome to what I read in May, and I'm going to be giving my honest opinions on all 10 books I read this past month. I read 6 romance books, 1 regular fiction, and then 3 fantasy books. I also have some good summer book recs. Let's switch it up, and we're going to start with fantasy since I have all the books here. So the first fantasy I read this month was Powerless by Lauren Roberts, and I actually read this during my 24-hour reading challenge. So I enjoyed this book. You are following Peyton, who is an ordinary, and Kai, who is an enforcer, and in this land there is this thing called the trials, which from my POV I kind of thought of it like a mix of the Hunger Games, a mix of the Triwizard Tournament from the Goblet of Fire and Harry Potter, and then the competition from Throne of Glass. They happen every 5 years. People are picked from the kingdom, but this kingdom is special because the people have magical powers, and those are called the elites. And then there is the ordinaries, who are basically because they're thought to, you know, dilute the bloodlines or some weird thing, I don't know. But I enjoyed it. I do think it was very heavy on the romance. There was just like a lot of scenes of the 2 main characters that didn't really push the plot forward, in my opinion. Was this the author that posted them writing on TikTok? Is that who this was? Because for a debut novel, honestly, I'm pretty sure this is her debut novel. Honestly, very good. I could not do this, but I think she did a good job for a debut novel. I'm excited to see what she does with the rest of the series. First fantasy book, done. The next fantasy book I read this month was The Cruel Prince, and I also read this in my 24-hour reading challenge, and I really enjoyed this book. Holly Black's writing was so interesting, following Jude, who is stolen away to the fairylands with her 2 sisters to be raised by this general. I have never read a female main character like Jude, and I love a strong female main character. Carrie Soto from Carrie Soto is back. Elin from Throne of Glass. Love me a strong female main character, okay? But Jude, wow, she is so intense. The way her mind works is so intriguing, and she is 10 steps ahead of everybody, and it's so fun to follow along her journey, and I'm excited to read the next book in this series, and I would recommend this. Oh, did I not say my ratings? Oops. I gave Powerless 3.5 stars, okay? I gave this solid 4 stars. Honestly though, looking back, it's probably like a 4.5 because it was so good. So I actually finished this. I think I finished my reading challenge at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Don't ask me why, okay? But I literally stayed up and finished it that day. I didn't go to bed until I finished this book because it was so good. So I think it needs an upgrade to a 4.5 because she's fire. Love her. Love Jude. Excited to see what happens in the next book. And then the last fantasy book that I read this month was The Atlas 6. And wow, I really loved Olivie Blake. I've been calling her Olivia. This is so embarrassing. Okay, Olivie Blake. I loved her writing. It was so well thought out and really intriguing and enticing. This is a dense book. I do not think this book is for everybody. It touches on philosophical questions, physical questions about time, thought, psychological things too that the characters are studying, but we get 6 point of views in this book, and they are all chosen because they are the best of the best in their magical specialties. And every 10 years, the Alexandrian Society, which protects the Library of Alexandria, picks 6 to compete to be initiated. You're following all 6 characters. They are so interesting. I was constantly questioning their intentions and why they were doing what they were doing. I'm like, do I trust you? Do I not trust you? It was so interesting, and it was such an interesting feeling while I was reading this book. This book also got 4.5 stars from me, and I do recommend it, but again, I don't think it's for everyone just because it's not like a light, airy time, but it is super, super interesting to me. I do recommend this book if you're getting into fantasy, or if you like magic, or if you like mystery and puzzles. This book was all of that and more. There were so many twists and turns, and I loved it all. So that concludes fantasy for the month of May. Now let's talk about romance. Who carried this month of romance for me? It was my queen, Elsie Silver. The first one I read this month is Wild Love by Elsie Silver, and we are following billionaire Ford, who is like in the music industry, and Rosie, who is back home after having some difficulties at her big girl corporate job in the cities. They had been friends growing up because this is a best friend sister, brother's best friend trope. I really enjoyed them reconnecting after not seeing each other for so long, and I enjoyed the setting. Again, Elsie Silver does not miss with the small towns. There was also a subplot in here that was really interesting to me, and I thought she handled it really well. And what I really enjoyed about this book was there was no big 3rd act conflict, and I just love Elsie Silver's writing. She cannot miss, so I'm excited excited to read the next book in the series, which I think comes out in September. I know that's a tentative publication date, but I really hope it does because I have now read all of Elsie Silver's books and I need more of them. I did read Elsie Silver's first series, which is the Gold Rush Ranch series this month, and the first book in this series was Off to the Did I say what I gave this? Oh my god, I'm being so bad. I'm being so bad. I'm being such a bad book reviewer right now. I'm not even telling you guys what I rated the book. I gave this a solid 4 stars. Next we have Off to the Races. We're gonna say the rating right off the bat so I don't forget. I gave this 4 stars also. This is Elsie Silver's first book she ever published. We are following Vaughn, who is the owner of a ranch, but it's horse racing. So they basically breed stallions. It's like if you've ever seen Secretariat, that movie, that's what these people do, except they're the best of the best and they have a lot of money because they have other companies and too, blah, blah, blah. Okay, Billy is a horse trainer and she comes to the farm to help them out because they're in a bit of a scandal and they need to be back on top. It's kind of enemies to lovers. Billy is so fun. I love her. She reminds me a little bit of Willa from Elsie Silver's Chestnut Spring series, and if you know me, Willa and Cade's book was one of my favorites from that series. So, you know, I eat this up. It was just a really good time. The rest I read on Kindle Unlimited. Also, by the way, you guys, all of the romance books I'm recommending, these 2 are great for summer. The next book I read was a photo finish by, again, Elsie Silver. And this is the second book in the Gold Rush Ranch series, and we are following Violet Eaton, who is the sister of the Eaton boys, who are basically the main characters in the Chestnut Spring series. And Cade is Vaughn's brother from the first book. And Violet is a horse jockey. Cade is kind of forced out onto the ranch to manage this other business. And so there's a little bit of forced proximity. This is actually a second chance romance. This is one of my more favorite Elsie Silver books. I gave it a 4.5 stars. I remembered. The first time they met, you kind of get told it throughout the story, and it's really interesting. I mean, I've never read something like that, so that was super interesting. And then I just love a grump. He is just a grump. He's so closed off, and he is actually a veteran, so he has a lot of trauma and stuff to work through. Sprinkle a little trauma on some characters and I'll just eat it up apparently. But I just think it makes him more human and more relatable, and it's more entertaining to read and see them go through their journey and come out on the other side. There was also a really big twist in this book that I was not expecting. After that happened, it clicks for you, but it doesn't happen until like further on in the book. So I really think Elsie Silver ate with this book. Second published novel ever, she ate. The next one in the series is The Frontrunner, and we are following Mira, who is the vet for Gold Rush Ranch, and Steven, who is kind of a competitor of the ranch, but not really. A little bit of a fake dating trope, but I feel like we really just dive deep into the characters in these books, and it's so fun to follow them. I love in this book a little bit, the male main character is pining for the female main character. The female main character is the one who's a little more closed off in this book, which is super fun. They both have super interesting backgrounds, which you find out about in this book, and that gets brought into their relationship and their dynamic, and I have just come to the conclusion that I'm never not gonna like an Elsie Silver book. Like, it's just not gonna happen. I'm gonna like them all. Oh, this one's so good too. Okay, so the last book of the Gold Rush Ranch series is called A False Start. We're following Nadia, who is Steven's sister from the previous book, and Griffin, who is Steven's best friend. So, yep, another brother's best friend sister trope. This one was so good. Oh my gosh. The chemistry, you could literally feel it off the page. I just loved it. I think, oh my god, I just remembered what Griffin did in this book for Nadia, and I'm like, what a man. What a man, okay? This book has probably one of the heaviest backstories for one of the characters. I love how Elsie Silver does it, is like, she's not gonna like sit and sulk because of all these terrible things that happened to her, but she's gonna prove all these people wrong, kind of turn all that negative into what's pushing her forward. Nadia, the female main character. I love Elsie Silver's characters and the worlds that she creates. In all of these books too, you get to see the previous characters and where on their journey they are, and I love that too. When I finished this book, did I say rating? Oh my god. 4.5 stars, okay? The whole series is a 5-star series. I don't think I gave any individual book 5 stars, but series as a whole is a 5 stars. But I just love the setting. I love how she creates the characters she does. I love the background. It never feels repetitive. They all feel like they truly have their own journey and their own personalities, and it's a real good time. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun. I love it. I know she's re-releasing the books with new covers, so I got this at Barnes & Noble a few weeks ago, but they're all on Kindle Unlimited, and I would highly recommend any of Elsie Silver's books for the summer. She is a phenomenal author, and it's just so fun to read her words, and I don't think I'll ever get sick of them. So the last romance book I read was actually Bridgerton, The Duke and I did a book versus show video, which you guys can go watch if you want. I gave that book, I think, a 3 stars. It was fun, it was entertaining, it just dragged on for me, and I think my mistake was that I watched the show before maybe, but also it was so hard for me not to compare it to the show because I love the show so much. I did really enjoy the book, honestly. I don't think it was a bad book. I do think it was a little repetitive and the scenes dragged out, so it was hard to want to binge it like I want to binge the show, but I would recommend it if you guys are going to watch Bridgerton. If you have watched the show, honestly, I don't think I'd recommend it because it's pretty much the same storyline of Daphne and the Duke, but you just don't get like all the other characters basically. It's really focused on the romance, but for a romance novel, very good. For our last category, which is just general fiction, I read The 5-Star Weekend this month. I really enjoyed that book. I gave it 3.75 stars. I love Elin Hilderbrand. Any of her books are great summer reads, beach reads. She is like the queen of New England beach read. Most of her stories, I believe, take place on Nantucket, which is actually where she lives, and it's just so vibey. I love it. It reminds me, I went to Cape Cod a couple summers ago, and whenever I read one of her books, I'm transported to the New England coast, and it's such a fun feeling reading her books. So we are following Hollis, who recently suffered a very big loss, and she has invited 4 of her friends to her Nantucket home, and she has brought her daughter as well to film it because she has this food blog that she posts on. We just get to see all the characters throughout the weekend, and they're all dealing with something that they bring to the weekend, and it's super fun to watch them figure out what they're working through because it's not really shared with the other people until later in the book. So it's kind of like they're escaping their real life, but then their real life gets brought onto this trip, which is super interesting. There's some big twists and turns in this book, which was fun, and I loved it. Elin Hilderbrand, great author. Her books are super fun, but any Elin Hilderbrand book is great for the summer. Those are all the books I read in May. If you have read any of these books, I'd love to chat about them in the comments. Maybe you like some of the books I didn't like, maybe you dislike some of the books I liked, but either way, reading is so subjective, and I would love to hear your opinions. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!